Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Current Review. And my name is Tebogo Kotsi. And today I'll be standing in for my colleague also, Mr. Thamsanqa, who's currently experiencing a couple of darkness in his place called load shedding. But he'll be back in the next few, not say minutes, but a few couple of hours. But I know he'll be back in a few minutes. But ladies and gentlemen, every Tuesday we bring you the current review, whereby we review certain topics that have caught our interest, that have been trending in terms of both political, business, life, lifestyle, and you name it, you get it. So basically, here at the current review, and this is hosted by the Central News team. And I can tell you one thing: we review everything. We leave no stone unturned, and we try to get answers where we can get. We also bring solutions. We don't just only emphasize on problems. We also try to put solutions to it, because that's why it's called the current review, whereby when we speak to a person, we also give them our opinion. We also give them what we think of a situation. So in this situation, we'll be talking to the spokesperson of the ActionSA, Lerato Ngubeni, with a couple of. It caught our attention this past few days, whereby they laid a complaint. Actually, they announced its intention to petition the South African Human Rights Commission to look into the serious allegation made by former employees of Wesbank. These allegations suggest that the bank may have imposed higher interest rates on black customers in vehicle finance. And I saw a trend on X the other day, whereby people were cutting up their cards, if I may say so, to say they were kind of like tired of being. They noticed how black people are being charged interest rates that are quite higher compared to this, which, yeah, Lena, I've been suspecting myself, because there's a couple of transactions that I've been questioning on my timelines. And I saw they would actually say to you, no, send us, what do you call this? Send us a DM so that we can address your matter. And I mean, why do you want to address something for five? So ActionSA has actually taken up its own. They took up to say they're going to lay that petition with the South African Human Rights Commission. And right now, I'm going to be speaking to Lerato Ngubeni, who's the spokesperson for the ActionSA. And please excuse, she won't be visual today, as I did indicate already. Technicalities nyana are showing us flames in such a bit. But hey, we live in South Africa. Lerato, welcome to the current review.
Thank you so much, Tebogo. Thank you so much to your listeners and your viewers all over South Africa who are listening to this broadcast. Thank you for inviting us and also for affording us the platform this morning.
It's our pleasure, ma'am. And, just to get into the crux of things, like I said earlier, yesterday I saw people cutting up their cards, complaining about interest rates. I didn't understand up until I went into it and I started seeing what they're actually talking about. And now it came to my attention also that ActionSA is doing something about this. Can you elaborate more in terms of what you guys found out with this whole Wesbank drama?
Indeed, it is a drama. We get wind of news coming through all from, of course, as a political party, from all over the country. This matter was actually raised by one of our colleagues in KZN, brought it to our attention as the Senate of ActionSA. And we then took, a decision to look into, the allegations and then take measures in order to be able to take up the story and bring it to the public domain in the fashion that, is currently being experienced. And so we looked into what is available in the public domain, and a financial services expert called Mr. Emerald, investigator is an expert called Mr. Emerald van Zyl. And Mr. Emerald van Zyl complained that this issue had been in his purview for several years now. I think, going as back as 2018, 2019, around there. And so, we then looked at what is already in the public domain, and then took the decision to write to the Human Rights Commission. Of course, at face value, we believe that this is in contravention of the equality clause in our constitution. No one should be discriminated against based on several attributes, including race. In this case, we're talking race. And so, we wrote to the Human Rights Commission and delivered our letter last week, Thursday.
And it's funny how when you mentioned that, I'm actually thinking about it to say, if you can look at the culture of how, for example, let's stick to vehicle finance. People that you notice, they will change cars constantly in JFL, on space. New model comes out, they get a new model. But also now when you find there's no balloon payment, and you find but the interest rate here is quite, it's quite low. Now, in this term, how is ActionSA?
We don't have the capability to investigate anything. We've got institutions in our country mandated by the Constitution to do the work. We brought the issue to the Human Rights Commission as the institution of first instance from where we are now. Mr. Van Zyl complained that he took this issue to the Human Rights Commission and he did not find any joy. And so he's looking at other avenues. Now, I was asked this question, as to why we would go to the Human Rights Commission if, in fact, he already failed. And our response there is simply that, when, how about tuba? A1, easy to break one twig. But if you have 5 or 6 twigs, it becomes harder to break them. And so when individual people, approach institutions for relief, I also mentioned an example of the Lily Mine families who, in fact, their celebrations are coming up, not celebrations as such, but commemoration of the loss of those 3 lives at Lily Mine in Barberton in Mpumalanga. When the families were going to the Department of Minerals, Rights and Energy and going to the different institutions of state to try and get assistance because their people have fallen under the mine, it is 8 years now and that container is still underground. And so they were not finding any joy up until, they came across, of course, Mr. Mashaba, who then took up the issue. Now the issue is constantly being reminded in the public domain. You've got the energy, you've got the space, you've got the resources to do it. It's the same thing now. Mr. Van Zyl may have been frustrated by the Human Rights Commission, but now they're no longer dealing with an individual. They're dealing with an organization, a political party that can make the noise that it needs to make, that can use the resources that it has at its disposal to get them to act in the ways that they're mandated by the Constitution. Should we fail, from the Human Rights Commission? Of course, there are other avenues and steps that we can take that our legal team is beginning to look into.
That's what I was actually going to ask you to say. Should there be sufficient evidence? What steps are you going to follow? And also, do you think that majority of people are actually are aware of this situation?
Well, I mean, I'm a Wesbank client also, interestingly enough. And I'm also looking into, what I am being charged. And also that, we do have in our country, we do have the Financial Sector Conduct Authority, among which is to make sure that transformation of the financial sector improves access. So, and then that it must also promote the fair treatment through robust regulatory framework. Now, the Human Rights Commission must investigate the veracity of what is happening, then elevate this issue towards the Financial Services Conduct Authority. And then, as that goes, eventually this issue needs to go all the way to the Equality Court, and Wesbank must be put before the Equality Court. Now, one of the sanctions that can come for Wesbank is that their license may be revoked. Now, when their license gets revoked, which we hoping that that will not be the case. Because once the license becomes revoked, then the bank ceases to function. And then you can imagine already with an exacerbated chronic unemployment rate in our country, sustainable unemployment rate in our country, the very same Black people are going to be impacted because it's Black people who work for the bank. It's Black people who are professionals also in the bank. It's Black people who are cleaners and so on in the bank. So lots of jobs will be lost because the Wesbank is not a regional bank. It's not a local bank. It's a national bank, operates all across the country. And so what we want is for the financial services sector to act within the mandates and the values of our constitution and the values of our country. And so if they are continuing to discriminate against people based on their racial composition, that cannot be allowed. That is criminal. It goes against the highest law in the land, that is our constitution, and that cannot be allowed. That we might find ourselves in a situation where it's not just a Wesbank issue, that it actually permeates across the financial services sector, which will be quite alarming for South Africa because remember when the 2008 meltdown happened, South Africa was hailed, a financial services sector was hailed as one of the best in the world that was able to withstand the meltdown that happened across the world with regards to financial services. And that would be a big blow for South Africa. And so we want to see that there is fairness. And as you rightfully said, this story would just die its natural death if the bank just came through and said, no, this is not true. There's a smoke screen. Here are our books. We're not actually doing that. And so that would be the easiest thing to do. But of course, the bank has not come forth. The only thing they have done is to simply deny the allegations.
I was about to ask to say, did they say anything yet? Because knowing the banks, they will always deny. It's like somebody who's been cheating in a relationship and then get caught. All they do is just deny. But how is ActionSA actually making people aware of this situation? Because, like I said, majority of people are not even aware, or they've been charged even unnecessarily.
So the first thing that we did was to, of course, release a media statement, which we did last week. We also went on a march to the South African Human Rights Commission to hand over that letter. We also have been, like I'm doing with you now, have been on a serious media drive to make sure that the issue remains in the public domain. We also I've been on Newsroom Africa. I actually, as a result of that interview, got a very interesting call yesterday of a gentleman out in the Cape. And I think he comes from the Eastern Cape, but he's now working in the Western Cape. And he is sending me a dossier that is over 20 years old, where he's been dealing with this issue. He is crying that he has lost absolutely everything. He is aware of at least 30 other people who have gone through the same. He's documented all of this. His issue is now, about to go before the Constitutional Court. And so I am waiting for him to send me a dossier of what he was referring to. But he was speaking about how that interview relieved him because for 20 years he's been fighting with Wesbank. For 20 years he's been dealing with this, where his car got repossessed, he lost his house, and as a result of everything that he's gone through, he's had the stress in his family, and that his wife ultimately passed away or committed suicide. Among most of the strenuous issues in relationships, in divorces, financial stability comes as very tops at the beginning of that list, at the very top of that list. And so this is one example of somebody who says he's been doing a lot on his own to make sure that, he can get justice from Wesbank. And so the next steps that we are going to be taking, as we said, the first one was the South African Human Rights Commission. We will wait for them to come back to us. Within 7 days, we will go back to them and find out what the update is. The other step that we are going to be taking, a couple of years ago, we did a petition, and we promoted a petition for South African qualified doctors, medical services providers who are in South Africa. Remember when we were sending or receiving the Cuban doctors to come into our country?
Yeah.
We got scores and scores of South African medical professionals who are saying they're unemployed, they're fully graduated, they're not getting opportunities and so on. And we were questioning why we were, getting Cuban doctors to come into the country, if in fact we have our own doctors who are here. And so we are going to run a similar petition already in the organization. We are promoting that our own people begin to look into their own records and see, because they are also clients of Wesbank. And so we are starting in-house, and we will mushroom it out into the wider South African public so that people can come through with their own stories. We are compelling people to come through with their own stories so that this issue can get traction. I mean, if you can appreciate that this issue came to our spotlight at the beginning of last week, we wrote to the Human Rights Commission and delivered the letter prior to, after having emailed it to the Human Rights Commission, we delivered a signed a physical copy on Thursday. Today is Tuesday. And so, as you know, that the days will unfold. This is a developing story. Our teams internally are also sitting to look at what various strategies we can take to make sure that we bring Wesbank to the table and that Wesbank becomes accountable for this allegation.
Wow, Lerato, you just, I don't want to lie to you. You got my mind even going even deeper. And this is a story that we will definitely pay attention to, and we will also make a follow-up on our side. I know my team will will put instruction to the team to actually look into the story, because you mentioned something that is quite serious, especially in South Africa nowadays, financial stress that is actually harming people. Nicely, fella, to say I've got problems in terms of affordability and all that. They don't care. I've seen when they repossess cars. They don't care about the person who's saying, this is the only car that we have to take the kids to school. They don't care about that. All they just want is their property, But when they want money from you, it's something else. But it's something that we'll definitely pay attention to.
Look, let me just mention one critical thing. These banks do not discriminate against people who are Black when we open accounts.
True.
They open accounts very easily. Online, you get in, no questions asked. You open an account, boom, you are functioning. You are a client. You're being charged interest. No one's asking about, having clients like that. If they're going to make a provision for white people that is cheaper, that is better for white people, then they must come out clearly and say that we are a bank for white people. Black people go banks. We are not interested in whatever answer they have to give us. What we need to know is that, are they conducting themselves in this unethical fashion, in this totally unconstitutional manner? And if that is the case, then we are very sorry for the bank. They're going to have to be accountable. I keep on referring to the fact that there has been a serious move in South Africa to put in the public domain, in the spotlight, misconduct, corruption, malfeasance in the state sector, within the state, within the political sphere. However, there is also private sector corruption that happens in this country, deep private sector corruption that often goes unchecked. And we cannot, for the life of our country and our people and the sustainability of our own livelihoods, afford for somebody to be treated differently just on the basis of race. If you look at what some of Mr. Van uncovered, is that Blacks were paying up to 19% more than whites, which is more or less 8% more than whites, which can amount to 1,000 rand more than whites. And so on a car, right? On a mortgage, it comes all the way up to 40% more than whites. Now, this is why more than Black white people, more Black people have all of their possessions being repossessed, and that cannot be allowed to happen in the country. That for some of us to be able to at least break through the ceiling of trying to be self-sustaining. You can imagine the number of many Black women, single mothers, who are dealing with children on their own, who must also be paying more interest rate. It is ridiculous, as opposed to a white counterpart who may not be a single mother, who may be having a secondary income and so on, having family income and so on, financial and wealth disparities in our country, inequality in our country. How is it that we must be allowing this to happen? Now, what is very, very alarming for some of us is we have institutions in this country that are supposed to be checking this type of behavior. I'm wondering why it is that that it has to be a whistleblower, a guy who worked in IT, who was just a professional there to do a job, who has to blow whistles such as this. And so these bodies that I'm mentioning should have been able to check this type of behavior as opposed to waiting for one whistleblower.
Okay. I wish I could listen to you. I wish you could continue with this conversation further. But unfortunately, time is not on my side. But like I say, this is a story that we'll make a follow-up on. It's quite interesting. It's a very interesting story. And South Africans must actually pay attention to this story due to the fact that, like you said, this is what I always preach. We are the economy, but we are the ones that are being slaved and that are being milked dry. And providing us with such information. And yeah, we'll definitely keep an eye out for ActionSA and what you guys will be doing.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, interest rates. We keep on hearing stories about inflation, interest rates going up and this and this and that. Currently, people's cars are being, and currently as we speak, there's so many cars that are being repossessed. People's properties are being taken by the banks and they're going up for auctions. Somebody was actually saying, there's an article that I read where a person was saying another person's repossession is another person's inheritance, something like that. I forgot the terminology that they used. So in this regard, if you know you've got a vehicle finance with any bank in South Africa, do yourself a favor. Go through your statements, go through your contract with a fine-tooth comb and check how much balloon payments you are paying. You shouldn't be paying balloon payments. I don't understand why you're paying balloon payments. There's money, and you find for a balloon payment, at the end of the day, it's equivalent to another car. But I'm not going to say much, ladies and gentlemen. That was Lerato from ActionSA, and we will hear what the South African Human Rights Commission also say, because they tend to say, no, we'll fight for your rights, but they keep quiet. Let's see what they can do, because I've been saying we are being overcharged. Like I said, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Tebogo Kotsi, and stay tuned. Don't go anywhere further. Just going to take a quick break. We've got another interview coming, and hopefully my brother will be here, because now we are talking road to elections. We are talking, interest rates, elections. They go together. They'll determine who you vote for. Next, we'll be interviewing Mayor Olani Tseletele. We'll be talking about the